You are listening to Topic Paranormal with your host, Georgina Holzmeyer, and the Paranormal Brain Trust, Robert M. Brown, Nick Landy, and Rachel Sosa. Topic Paranormal covers Paranormal Talk, Paranormal Tales, Paranormal Training, and so much more. Experience the topics of conversation on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Topic Paranormal. Have a topic suggestion or a question? Send an email to topicparanormal@gmail.com or post it to the Topic Paranormal Facebook page. Topic Paranormal is part of the Astronet Radio family. Visit astronetradio.com for more awesome podcasts. And now, your host, Georgina Holzmeyer.
Hello and welcome to Topic Paranormal. Hey, thank you for joining us for this most momentous of moments for us. It is our very first Astronet Radio show. I am Georgina Holzmeyer, and I'll be your hostess for this episode. The Mighty Brown Trust of Robert M. Brown, Nick Landy, and Rachel Sosa, as well as Cindy Little, will be rotating through on a regular basis as well. You'll hear from them occasionally, but today I've invited my friend George Jones.
Hello.
Hey, George. George is a paranormal enthusiast. He's been a friend of mine for years, and I felt like he would be the best guest for my very first show.
I'm very excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Just a little bit about me, just so you guys know, I have been involved in the paranormal in one way or another since I was a baby. I've experienced all kinds of things, from hauntings to visitations from deceased friends and relatives to you name it. I've seen it all in one way or another. I've witnessed possessions, both partial and full. I owned Tours of Tyler for a very long time and did haunted tours all over the Tyler and East Texas area, and still do that occasionally, although not so much. And when I heard Georgina was wanting to do a show, I was so excited because she has come to my paranormal conference and she has done some excellent ghost hunting work with me, and she's been one of my speakers before, and she may be again, don't tell her. So Georgina, I'm excited. What's your show about? What are we going to talk about?
We are going to talk about anything and everything related to the paranormal as well as the spiritual realms. We're going to talk about investigative methods, investigations we've been on, locations. We're going to talk about the thought processes, the philosophies and theories even behind it. We're going to cover a lot of parapsychology as well. Pretty much anything that you want to know, we're going to talk about.
Well, that opens a whole can of worms for me, see, because I want to know a lot, you know.
Well, good.
And there's really, since I have kind of been out of it for a little while, there really isn't anybody around here that I talk to so much about it. So I'm really excited to hear some of the things that you have to say. And this is a broad question, but maybe I can get an answer that you might be willing to give. What got you into the paranormal, and what is the paranormal to you?
Oh, wow. The first one's the easier, so I'm going to take question one.
Question one for $100. Yay.
Yay. Basically, my first potential paranormal experience, I was around 11 or 12 years old, and it was your typical, we were remodeling the house. My mom and dad were removing a divider wall between the kitchen and the living room, and my bedroom happened to share a wall with both those rooms. In fact, right outside my door was the attic access and the wall that they were removing. And so basically I'm asleep one night, I hear a conversation between two men and a lady. And
you hear this in your room?
I hear this right outside my room, right outside that door. In fact, we had the old doors that had the skeleton keyholes.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, so you could actually look through that keyhole. And when I heard that conversation, I got up out of bed and looked through the keyhole. But I didn't see anybody. And it was kind of odd because it was late at night. I knew I'd been asleep for a bit. But I didn't think too much about it because Dad was a member of several committees, so occasionally there would be people over after I went to bed. No big deal. So I got up the next morning and I'm like, hey, Mom, who was over at the house last night? And she's like, what? And so I tell her, well, I heard a couple of men and a lady talking, and I thought it was maybe Dad and one of his committee members or something. She's like, no, there was nobody here. You were just dreaming. So, okay, so I don't think about it. A couple of nights later, it happens again. And this time, I'm a little more aware of, what the heck? You know, it's the same two men, the same female voice, and they're talking like they're planning a party on a date or something like that.
So you can kind of make out what they're saying?
I can make out enough of what they're saying to know that they're planning an event of some kind. They're talking about one of the gentlemen says something about, okay, so we're good for like next Wednesday. And it was Wednesday. That was a key word. It's next Wednesday. And the lady was like, yes, we'll get on that. Or, you know, it was an affirmation of basically of what he was saying. It was a fairly clear conversation. And so I got up out of bed and went to the door and looked through the keyhole again. And once again, I don't see people. And I'm thinking about this. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. It's way late for people to be at my house.
And how old were you at this time?
11 or 12.
Okay.
It was more intriguing than scary.
But you weren't frightened at all?
No, it was like, who the heck are these people and what are they doing at my house this late at night? So I walk over and look out the bedroom window, which looks out onto the driveway. There are no cars out there, only Mom and Dad's cars. There are no extra cars. So it's like, okay, oh, that makes no sense. I must be dreaming. I'm sleepwalking. So I go back to bed. Get up the next morning, same conversation with my mom. Mom, those people were talking again last night. Did Dad have people over? And she's like, no, Georgina, you're just dreaming. Don't worry about it. Okay. The third time it happened, I got up out of bed. I looked out the window first and saw, once again, no cars. So I walk over to the door very quietly, and I'm listening, and I can hear, and I realize that the conversation's actually happening very high, not like a normal person height. It sounded like it was coming from higher.
Like from the ceiling?
Like from the ceiling versus, midway through the door kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it was odd. And so I very gently and quietly turn the doorknob and pull it open real fast. No one's there.
Did the voices stop?
The voices stopped, just like that.
Just like that.
Yeah, it was like as soon as I opened the door, they stopped. And, it was like, oh, this is crazy. So I actually got up and walked around the house at that point to look for the people.
You were a brave little girl.
Hey, I grew up out in the country. We were free-range children.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, there was no one there. So it was like, okay, this is so weird. There's got to be an explanation for this. And it stopped. By that point in time, Mom and Dad had finished the renovation. They had opened up the kitchen, and the voices stopped. So whatever party they were planning on that Wednesday, it wasn't going to happen at our house, evidently, because they were gone. Never heard those voices again. And I don't know, it was an odd thing, and I had forgotten about it actually for several years, but it was the thing that got me to thinking about things I didn't know about, things that you don't see but could be there. That whole occult, paranormal, I didn't know the word paranormal back then.
Right.
But that whole field of study, so I really got involved into the Greek mythology, anything along those lines, anything witchcraft, anything that was unexplained.
You see, that sounds so familiar. I mean, the same thing happened to me. I had an experience much like yours, except I had experiences from when I was just barely old enough to remember. I mean, I was a toddler, seeing and hearing things I couldn't explain, but I didn't know what it was. And then later on, when I was old enough to realize, I was fascinated by it, also a little frightened. I would not have gotten up and gone to the house and checked. And we lived in the country. We were free-range kids, too. But I wouldn't. And I remember I was about 6 or 7 years old, sitting in the middle of the floor, and my mom was talking to my older brother, and she looked at me and she says, "George, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I didn't think about it, didn't bat an eye. I said, "I want to be a paranormal investigator." I didn't even know what that was. It just came out of my mouth.
Oh my gosh.
And she said, well, if anybody can make money at it, you probably can. And that was it.
So you had support from an early age.
I guess, yeah.
Hey.
She was always, when I would come home, and she passed away in '09, but when I would come home from my hunts, because I was hunting and investigating long before, it was on TV and it was cool and everything, she'd always ask me, well, what'd you find tonight? She'd want to hear all about it. So I did have that support.
Oh, that is great. I didn't have that level of support. My choice of reading materials were frowned upon, mainly because they didn't involve the Bible or a Bible study at the time.
Well, see, my sister was hardcore. She condemned my soul to hell. So,
yeah.
She's like, you're going to hell, hell, hell. So there you go. We'll support on one side, but not the other.
Definitely. And I think that plays a major role in our paranormal experiences. And that's one reason we're going to be talking about the spiritual realm and spiritual beliefs and religion, because it does affect the paranormal experience. And what you see as paranormal, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting conversation.
It's kind of hard to define to me. What is paranormal and what isn't, and what is it to whoever?
Definitely. In fact, we will get into that a little bit more here in a moment.
Okay. So what you're trying to say is it's time for a commercial break and I should shut up?
Pretty much.
Okay.
George, you're psychic, I tell you.
No, I have ESPN. Going to commercial break. We'll be right back.
And we're back. George Jones is
Yay.
my guest. Yay!
I'm so happy.
And George, I think when we left off, we were talking a little bit about what is the paranormal and how it can have different meanings and flavors for different people based on their experiences growing up, the way they were raised, a little touch on religion there.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's interesting that you kind of bring that up that way, because I've dealt with so many different people that have different ideas of what the paranormal is. I mean, some people think deja vu is paranormal, some people don't. Some people think that religion is paranormal, and some people don't. The fact that there is a God or isn't a God, is that paranormal? Is it not? The devil, is that paranormal? Is it not? These are all things that, I can't think that there's a definable answer. Well, I don't know. Help me.
I think that's one reason we do the paranormal investigations. We don't have those answers, and even the evidence that we come up with leaves you doubting a little bit more. You may feel a little more firm in a technique, but as far as actual answers, and especially big answers like, is God paranormal? I don't know. God comes up on some of our spirit communications.
It's true.
And
That's
we've
true.
had spirits talk to us about heaven. So it is. That's a very hard thing to answer. I don't think there are answers, honestly.
Right. I mean, when you say paranormal to some people, I mean, most people automatically think of ghosts, perhaps witchcraft, maybe UFOs, maybe Bigfoot. Those seem to be the big ones, but there's a broader band than that.
There is. You think about some. It's kind of interesting to me, the Catholic religion specifically, when they go back and look at individuals and deciding whether or not they're going to make those individuals saints. It's some of those events that they claim can be very paranormal sounding. The tears of blood coming out of the statue. There's no answer for that.
No, the whole Catholic religion to me is so ritualistic. It seems like there's a lot of paranormal in the Catholic religion. But I've known several Catholics that disagree, but I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a matter of opinion. Plus, what is your own definition? I don't know.
Definitely. The simplest definition of paranormal, according to Webster's, is alongside the normal. Okay, so then you get into normal. What's normal?
And what is normal? That is an age-old question right there.
Yeah, definitely. So that's one of the things that's so fascinating about the field of paranormal study, is because it can go so many different directions. There are so many different avenues to take, and it's just, yeah, I get a little geeky with it, obviously. That's the reason my show's topic, paranormal.
Right. No, that's cool. I like the way that you're going to be all-inclusive and have all kinds of different things going on. Which brings me to a question, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
You know, you and I both started off in the paranormal, kind of, we were indoctrinated at a young age, okay? And we've got a lot of friends that are in the paranormal.
Yes.
In fact, you've named several that are in your brain trust or whatever.
Yes.
God, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just, what is it that makes some people able to be there and not there, and sense things and not sense things, and how there are people asking me all the time, how do you get to be sensitive? Is there a way to do that?
Oh, that's a really good question, and that's another one that there's a lot of discussion and different thought processes on. There's a whole field out there called parapsychology, and it talks about the psychology of the paranormal. And there's a thought process out there that some of us are just wired that way. Like some of us have blue eyes or green eyes, or some of us are allergic to poison ivies and others aren't. It's kind of hardwired into us. But at the same time, I've seen people that I have investigated with that didn't think they had any kind of abilities, yet they got interested in it and they started studying a couple of different things, reading more about meditation, reading more about tuning in and listening and acting on their intuition, that little gut feeling. And now some of those people feel like they have become more psychic and have actually started speaking as experts on that after such a short time frame of that experience. So I would say yes, you can definitely study and become psychic. You can work on that and grow your abilities. At the same time, my personal inclination is you're either born that way or you're not. But that's my personal opinion.
Well, one of the things that I used to do on my haunted tours was, you know, especially for the people that scoffed, because you always get those people that are like, ha, 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 this is such a joke, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, tell me something. Have you ever experienced deja vu?
Yes.
And most people would say yes,
Yes.
you know, okay. Well, have you ever been thinking about someone and found out they were thinking about you at the same time? Most people will say yes.
Yes, they will.
Okay. Have you ever had somebody on your brain and you don't know why, and then you find out that they were having a difficult time at that moment, or something happened to them?
Yes,
Most-
every one of them.
Most people will say yes. And then, have you ever walked past a place, a building, or a room and felt like, I don't want to go there?
Oh, yes.
Okay, those feelings that you get?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last one I always say is, have you ever met somebody and either instantly liked them or instantly disliked them?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yes, okay. Those are all, I would tell them, okay, well, that's my litmus test for the paranormal. Are you sensitive? Do you have these abilities? I think everybody has it to some degree. And it can be built on if you recognize it and know what you're doing, but I don't know how to tell people what to do. That's my thing.
Yeah, it's like, I don't think there is a set list of books to read, a set of exercises to do.
I wouldn't even know what to recommend.
Yeah, it's very hard. And I think, you know, I have to go back and correct myself, actually, with the point that you brought up. If you're born with it and it's not something that you grow up experiencing or that you're encouraged to experience, those abilities and sensitivities may be pushed down and you're just not recognizing them. And once you become aware of them and you start using them, I think they do grow. So it's not necessarily you're either born with it or you're not.
Well, maybe you're born with different levels.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And what you said about being pushed down,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Can we talk about that a little bit more?
Sure.
Tell me what your opinion of being pushed down is.
Oh, my personal experience about being pushed down is having books on those topics removed from your room or your book bag because it's not appropriate for someone your age. Having the youth minister talk to you about your sinful ways.
Ah, there you go. Now you're getting there.
Things along those lines. Just basically being, and this level was not my personal experience. I have talked to other people who have really great high level of psychic ability, and they talk about how when they were children and they would be talking to a spirit or seeing and asking these questions that there's no way this child knows this, and then having to go through psychiatric treatment because their parents and loved ones thought that they were having mental issues and they wanted to get that nipped in the bud real quick.
Right.
Those levels of being pushed down, as well as just some people are creeped out when you start talking about this stuff.
That's true. I run into that.
Yeah, I've had some interesting expressions come up once they find out what I do for a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I wanted you to say, what I wanted to hear from you, because I don't want to be the only one that says it, but there are people out there who will condemn it and push it down, or they'll cause you to feel bad about it, and you'll push it down yourself. Well, we don't need to talk about that because obviously that makes them uncomfortable or makes them think I'm a freak.
Yes. Yes.
Or weird. And those are stigmas that we've tried to get away from because it's not freaky, it's not weird, it's actually part of life that people ignore or choose to ignore or are told to ignore. When it's there, it's around us every single day. Why would you ignore that?
I don't know, because it is very normal. It is very natural. And let's face it, the paranormal field has had its challenges when it comes to credibility.
Oh, my Lord. Yes.
I was just reading the other day a book, and I'll post it on our Facebook page because I can't remember the author's name right now. And she is very skeptical. So one of the trips that she made, she was talking about the spiritualist movement in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that Victorian era. And there is a museum in where was it? Somewhere up in New York, somewhere in the Northeast, that actually had a piece of the cheesecloth that one of the mediums, basically what she would do is she would swallow, and this is like yards, like 2 or 3 yards of cheesecloth. And for those of you that aren't familiar with cheesecloth, it's a material that's mesh. It's got a really wide weave in it so that when you're canning, you can basically use it as a filter or a colander. And so they would take, it's very thin, it's very flimsy. And so this medium would take 2 to 3 yards of this cheesecloth and swallow it to the point, so that way it was there, and when she would be conducting a seance in a very dimly lit room with the candles going and all of that, back during this time frame, she would regurgitate this.
Oh, gross.
And be able to actually like pull it out of her mouth.
Oh my God.
And they would be taking, photographs. And remember, those particular cameras back then, it was not a 2-second snap and we were done. It would take a couple of minutes to have that the powder flash. It's set on the slide that was in there, and then for it to actually process. So this was like a 2 to 3 minute time frame. It took a long time. And so she's pulling this cheesecloth out of her mouth, and it's being portrayed as ectoplasm.
That is disgusting.
It is pretty gross.
But it's interesting that you bring up that time period. Have you ever heard of the town of Lilydale?
I don't know if I have or not.
Okay, same time period, same region. There's a town in New York State called Lilydale.
Okay.
And it was formed by paranormal psychics, mediums, empaths, and it's still there to this day. And it's all about that. I mean,
wow.
the whole town. And it isn't really advertised very much, but it's there. There's books about it. Look it up, Lily Dale.
Lily Dale.
You'll be impressed because it has everything from mediums to psychics to aura readers. I mean, it's all there. It's all there,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's all this whole little town. That's all it is. I've always wanted to go there.
Oh, that sounds like a road trip.
That sounds like a road trip. So I'm really impressed that actually happened, and they kind of made it a sanctuary because they didn't want so many people. You know, they weren't trying to go there to bring business there. They were trying to go there to be around like-minded people to get away from it.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
So yeah.
So, we're going to move on into commercial here. Let those like-minded...
You're always sending me to commercial break.
I know.
Listen, this is getting depressing. I can't wait to talk some more.
All right.
Here we go. Commercial time.
And we're back.
Yay.
Yay. So, George, let me ask you this. Give me a couple of your favorite locations to investigate. Some of your top investigations you've ever done.
Okay, that comes with a qualifier.
Okay.
Do you mean some of the most terrifying locations that I've been in, or do you mean some of the more fun ones?
The ones that you have enjoyed most. We'll start there, and then we'll eventually hit the challenging ones.
Okay. Well, there is a church and cemetery that is not too terribly far from here. I'd say it's about an hour and a half drive. It's in the middle of the country. It's a little bitty old wood frame church. It's right at the edge of the cemetery. And it was one of the most interesting investigations that I ever had. We didn't get anything really from the cemetery at all, but the church itself was really unique. It started raining, so we all went inside the church because it was open, and it looked like it hadn't been used in a long time, but it was still, the pews were all still in there, the podium was still in there, and there was a really beat up old piano in there. And it wasn't big enough. I mean, maybe it was 15 feet wide by maybe 30 feet long. It was just this narrow shotgun kind of a building. And we were sitting in there, and nothing was happening, and we were just kind of talking. There was about 5 or 6 of us, and then my K2 started going off. And then each of us started having different experiences, and as the rain lessened, we started hearing voices, and we were actually hearing a sermon. Now it was the weirdest thing in the world, because it was like you could hear the preacher preaching and talking about, coming home and not forgetting, where your heart is, and all this stuff.
So you could hear
You
these
could hear
words.
him.
It was audible.
Yeah, it was audible. We didn't record anything because we were stunned.
Yeah.
And it was just loud enough to hear. And we were looking around. There's no electricity in this building because it was built long before they put electricity out there. And so we were looking everywhere, to see if there were any radios or anything going on. There was nothing. And then the next thing you know, we saw what looked like a few people sitting in the rows here and there. And they would fade in and fade out.
Oh, wow.
Now, this was a very heavy electrical storm. So there was a lot of lightning going on and a lot of things like that. But the rain itself was just pitter-patter after a few minutes. And that's when we started becoming aware of it. Because when it was storming really bad, we couldn't hear anything. But when it started dying down, it's when we started being aware of it. And then as the electricity and everything, the lightning and everything started fading, so did all the voices, and it all just went away.
Wow. So were y'all sitting in the pews?
We were in the pews.
And so these people, these
Yeah.
spirits, were in and amongst you,
Yeah.
sitting next to you. There's,
Yeah.
oh my God, old man Crabtree from 200 years ago.
It was the weirdest
Oh, wow.
thing. We were simultaneously amazed and also kind of like, what is going on?
Wow.
Because it wasn't like I'm looking at you now. It wasn't like you're there, but it was like a shadow image of you, and then you would like flicker in and flicker out.
Oh, wow.
So we'd just see you for a second or two, and then you'd be gone. And then we might see a shadow of a person over here, and then it would be gone. But the voice remained constant. And we could hear people in the background coughing. It was just like you were listening to an old church sermon. It was the weirdest thing, but it was the most amazing experience I had because there were 5 of us in there. We all experienced it simultaneously. And, of course, we have no frickin' evidence whatsoever.
Of course not.
Because the only thing we thought to do was to watch the K2, and then we're like, oh my God, look over there. Did you hear that? Oh my God. And that was it. And by the time we thought about recording, it was already too late. It was fading out. So
Definitely. Oh my God. So how long did that experience last?
once we were able to identify that it was voices and they became clearer to where we could hear kind of what they were saying, until it ended was 5 or 6 minutes.
Wow, that's a good long time.
It was a long time, but we spent too much time trying to disprove it, and not enough time focusing on it. You know what I mean?
I do, yes. Am I really hearing that? No, that's got to be her over there.
Exactly.
No, somebody's got their phone on.
Is your phone on? Are you listening to something? Because we thought maybe somebody was trying to instigate something by playing an old sermon on their phone or whatever, but no. No.
Wow.
It came out of nowhere. So that was a really amazing experience to me. I don't think I've ever had anything that wonderful because it felt good.
Yeah.
It was almost like they were saying, hey, come back anytime.
Man, that is an awesome experience.
It is. It was something. Sad to say that level of warmth has only happened to me one time.
I would imagine that level of experience is a once in a lifetime. Based on the short time relatively that I've been involved in investigating, having an experience to that level to where you're actually seeing figures, shadows, people, usually it's like half a second. And that's one of the reasons we doubt ourselves so bad, is because it happens so quick. It's like, no, I just, something flashed. That wasn't what it was. And so to have it last that long and be that level of intense and clear, dang.
Well, it was the right place, the right time. I mean, it was a huge electrical storm. We found out later that a tornado had actually passed by.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
it didn't hit us, but it hit about 2 or 3 miles up the road. We didn't have a clue.
Oh, wow. So, hey, maybe we can figure out a way to combine storm chasing and paranormal investigation.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that on TV
Storm
yet.
and paranormal. Sounds good to me. I mean, I really do believe that, the electrical charges in the air make a difference.
I think they do too. And it's interesting when you're out in those electrical storms, you can feel that energy. You can feel that static electricity. And it definitely does. It contributes, it increases the activity. I think it makes the spirits themselves stronger. Of course, once again, that's my personal opinion based on experiences and some meters and things like that. It's hard to say for sure, yes, that's definitely what you're doing and picking up on, but, that's my story anyway.
Well, the other thing that was interesting about it is nobody got touched. Nobody said, oh, something's touching me. It wasn't like that at all. And yet we all felt, the electric in the air, the goosebumps, the static.
Wow.
It was really, really a wild experience. And when we came out of the church, we went back through, because it just stopped raining. We walked back through the graveyard one more time. Nothing.
Dead. Literally dead.
And I have never been back because I don't want to cheapen it.
Yes.
I don't want to go back and nothing happen. And I don't want to go back and be disappointed.
I can see that.
That was a one time only.
Wow. Everyone's looking for one time like that.
True.
I think so.
On the flip side, I've had some negative ones that were pretty intense too.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those challenges.
Oh, should we?
Yeah.
Must we?
No, we don't have to.
What do you want to know?
One of the things I'm always interested in, I've only been in 2 locations where I actually felt like there was a negative, non-human something there. I'm not a big fan of the D word. I don't use it a lot because it just doesn't happen as often as people think it does. It does happen.
It does happen.
It does happen. And I'm always curious on those negative ones. What do you do after that negative experience to, like, protect yourself or shake that off so that it doesn't follow you home, so that it doesn't, I want to say doesn't affect you, yet at the same time, having had a couple of negative experiences, you can't help but have it replay in your mind a few times. It does come back up.
Well, I'm not going to go into great detail. If you want me back on another show and you ask me, then I will, but in interest of time, I was on an investigation one time with several good friends of mine. It was a private investigation. We didn't invite any newbies. It was all just us, and we got weird vibes. Again, there had been a storm. We were inside a warehouse type situation, and one of the ladies that was with us said, "I feel like there's a bad woman here." And that just came out of the blue. Now, this is not a person who's really overly sensitive. It just came out of the blue. We're like, okay, interesting. And we had gathered in this area where there was an old kitchen table, and we had set our equipment down. Well, the equipment started going off, and then our REM pod scooted over about 3 inches.
Wow.
We were all trying to figure out what the heck happened, and several of us were like, it doesn't feel good in here. You know, if you feel energy, you can feel good and bad. It didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And so we were getting ready to leave, and we had kind of camped out around this table watching to see if it was going to do it again or whatever. And one of our members was sitting on the floor, and we were like, okay, let's gather our stuff up and let's get out of here. And then we hear, and we're like, yeah, it's kind of funny. You only did it once, huh? Like, wait a minute. What's wrong with you, honey? Are you okay? And her head was down. Her hair was draped down over her head. We couldn't see her face. And this laughter was coming from her. We walked over to her, and one of our members touched her on the shoulder. Like, hey, are you okay? And when that touch happened, she threw back her head. Her eyes were pitch black. Her mouth opened to a degree no human mouth should open. It was like it came unhinged.
Oh, wow.
And the laughter poured out of her along with hissing and spitting, and she was speaking in a whole different language.
Oh, dang. That sounds like classic possession.
It was insane. Well, we grabbed her. At the same time we were grabbing her, one of the other guys that was with us started feeling like he was fixing to pass out. He's like, I'm hurting, my head is hurting, I'm going to pass out. Well, we got them out. We literally had to take her and drag her out of this room, down the hallway, all the way to the end of the building, and drag her outside.
Oh, wow.
And she was fighting and spitting and speaking in this language. We held her down. We had a shaman with us, Native American, luckily, who was able to take care of it. I mean, he used everything he had, crystals, sage, whatever. We held her down. You know, I don't know what he said, but he was over there chanting whatever he knew. And then suddenly her eyes went back to normal. She turned over and she spit out this horrible black stuff that looked like tar. It came out of her mouth and onto the ground.
Oh, wow.
And she wasn't right for quite a while after that. It was one of the most horrible nights of my life. I actually, unfortunately, did record that, and I do have it if someday you want to hear it and hear some of the words that she was saying, because I'm not going to say them out loud.
Okay.
But she did name demonic names that I actually was able to look up and verify. Wow. It was absolutely horrible. It was one of the most horrific moments of my life because I thought we'd lost her. And unfortunately, she was sick before we started this investigation. She had just discovered that she has cancer, and she was going through chemo, and she was really weak. And we had tried to talk her out of going because we were worried about her, and she wouldn't hear it. She was like, no, this is the last thing that I love is to do this, and I'm not going to let this beat me. So she went in sick and weak, and she was the vulnerable target.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, this is the perfect time to talk about this is the reason that you have to be aware of where you're at physically, who you're taking with you on these investigations. It's not just shits and giggles all the time.
It's not.
It is not. And even though that is a rare happening, you have to prepare for the worst case scenario. What would you have done had your shaman not been there?
What would I have done? That's the thing. I mean, I could have got over there and I could have prayed and I could have saged, but would it have worked? I don't know. I don't know.
Man.
You know, I'm not a man of the cloth. I have my faith, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And, you know, it scared me so bad. That was one of the reasons, you know, I told you I'm semi-retired from paranormal. Mm-hmm. That and a bunch of other things. There's always somebody out there who thinks they're the baddest thing there is. Yes. Ain't nothing gonna touch me, you know, I'm wrapped in Jesus or whatever. And, you know, that's good that you have that faith, but there's always something out there that's gonna test it.
Yes, they will.
There's always something, and you won't even know it. It'll get a hold of you and you won't even know it. And then suddenly you'll start having a bad day, and then a bad week, and then a bad month, and your luck will change, and you'll start alienating people. And you don't even know you're already fucked up.
Yeah. And people don't recognize that as part of the negative side of paranormal investigating. I've seen that particular example happen several times where we left a location and for the next 2 weeks, it's the grumpiest bitch I've been around. What the hell happened to Sweet Susie? You know, and then you trace it back and you figure out that's what it was.
Yep.
Same thing. She was sick.
Yep.
She was dehydrated. She had had the flu just a few days before. You know, don't let your friends do that, people.
Yes. Don't let them put themselves in that situation.
Exactly. Okay.
So, I don't know. It's just things to think about. And sometimes they won't listen to you, but you're always in control of yourself. And if they won't listen to you, then you don't have to be a part of it.
Sometimes you have to take control. Like I am right now. We're going to move into commercial and we'll be back in just a moment. I know, it's always at the good spot.
I know. Okay, we'll be back. Yay, we're back.
Yay. Hey, one of the things I want to do now is spend a little more time talking about what we ended with, the protection and being aware of where you're at physically, mentally, etc., and maybe even taking a little responsibility for the people that are there with you. George, what's your recommendation on prepping yourself for an actual paranormal investigation?
Well, first of all, don't go alone, ever. Ever. And second of all, if it's one of your earliest or your first even, don't go with somebody that's inexperienced. Make sure you go with somebody that knows what they're doing or have been around the block a couple of times. And it doesn't hurt to take different types of protection. A lot of it depends on your own beliefs, okay? I have found in my experience that the more you believe in something, the more real it is. Mm-hmm. And that includes your protection.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So, you know, if you believe in the Bible, take a Bible with you. If you believe in crystals, take a crystal with you. If you believe in sage, take sage with you. Whatever it is, you have to believe that it's going to work. Have faith of some sort, because to go into something with no faith, I think, leaves you very open.
I would agree with that. I certainly do.
That's my opinion. So I would say, you know, every investigation that I ever went on, and even on my ghost tours, I always carried a little bit of holy water, and I carried sage, sometimes lemongrass, a few other things, just to make sure that I had my bases covered. I would even carry frankincense and myrrh if I could get a hold of it, because I believe that anything that has faith is exactly what you need to push away the faithless, you know.
Well, that's a great way to put that, the faithless, because that's generally what you're dealing with.
Usually, yeah. So that's my belief. Don't ever walk in there with your chest puffed out and think, I can handle anything because I'm Billy Badass. That's exactly why I stopped doing my tours, because there was one on every stinking tour. And if it wasn't that, then it was somebody who wouldn't listen and just ran off in the middle of it.
And did their own thing.
Yep.
Yes.
And I just, I'm not going to be responsible for you guys screwing up your lives. No, thank you. So there you go.
Definitely.
What do you do?
I spend a lot of time. I do spend time in meditation and prayer before I go, especially if it's a location that has a reputation. I spend that time doing that. I have some oils that I use as well that I find very effective for protecting against actual, more the psychic level aspect of some of that energy, the trying to grab on thing. And I have an oil for that works beautifully. I carry crystals. I wear crystals. I love crystals. You'll see them everywhere. I also have an iron cross that my husband made me out of horseshoe nails. And there's a lot of significance to that little cross because, he made it for me. He put a lot of love and intention in that cross when he made it for me. And it was an acknowledgement on his part and an acceptance, a token of acceptance as well, that I do what I do, and there is that element of danger that he didn't want to talk about.
Right?
Yeah, he's got his own ideas, Yeah, if it exists, that's great. If it doesn't, that's great. He just doesn't need to know one way or another and doesn't need to be involved in finding it out.
Have you noticed that there's a lot of couples that are that way? The guy may be into it, and the woman's like, look, do what you do, leave me alone,
Yes.
Or vice versa.
Yes.
It's very rare that I actually find a married couple. Deborah and Mike Charbonneau are one of the few married couples that are into it, both of them on the same level.
Yeah, I have noticed that. And even the couples, I have a couple of friends that their husbands do come with them occasionally, but even then they're more sitting back watching.
Oh yeah, stand back, watch.
Yeah, they're not really jumping in there to participate. And the same thing. In fact, a friend of mine, his wife had her very first paranormal investigation with us a couple of weeks ago, and I can't wait to talk to her and see what she thought. Yeah.
That's always fun.
It was a good thing. It was a really good thing. But it's always fun, especially at that level that people are. I'm very into it. I've been doing it for a long time. People know when they talk to me, we're probably going to talk ghost at some point.
At some point.
At some point,
Do people send you stuff like they do me? I get tagged in so many. Would you stay in this house all night long for $1 million? And hey, this is the most haunted house in the world. And I'm like, guys.
Yes, I get those all the time. And then I have people that are funny. We'll be at a location and they'll be like, well, did somebody make hotel reservations? And you're like, what? You want to leave the location? There's this nice comfy concrete. It's only 32 degrees. What are you talking about? Didn't you bring a sleeping bag?
I went on this overnight vacation with a friend of mine. And this friend, but I'm not going to call him out on it because I love him. But their whole team would go, set up their equipment, and then throw out their sleeping bags and go to sleep and sleep the whole night through. And then get up the next morning and go, did we get anything? Like, what kind of an investigation is that?
Oh.
You go out there, you investigate till 10 p.m. and then you're out for the night?
Yeah, no. The earliest investigation I've ever ended was around the midnight, 1 o'clock hour. And then I'm still up for a couple more hours. I don't sleep well on investigation, and I get a couple of hours, and I'm the first one up the next morning because I got to be checking that camera footage. I got to be listening to those EVPs.
Mm-hmm,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
No, investigation is not the time to sleep.
No, I'm like, what kind of investigation is this? This is a sleepover, guys. This is a camp out, not an investigation. I don't know what's going on here.
And if you've ever had to review those recorders after people have gone to sleep, let's just say it's a little hard to hear those EVP levels over some of the chainsaws that are going off.
Absolutely. And speaking on the same topic about different investigating styles, have you ever been on one where there's 50,000 people there, and they're all expecting to get evidence? What the hell?
Yes, and usually those are the ones that I paid ridiculous money for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of those, I'll be
Yeah,
honest,
no,
you know?
No.
It's interesting from a people-watching standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
and if you can find a small little corner, you know, so I have actually had experiences in those situations, but they weren't recordable because of
Yep.
the night of 1,000 flushes. I'll
Yeah.
share that with you one of these days.
The
That was
night of
quite,
1,000 flushes.
yeah, it was
Okay.
quite interesting. EVPs also aren't audible over toilet flushes, by the way.
Good to know. But yeah, that's I can't understand, especially at some of these conferences and things that are going on, and they send 40, 50 people in at a time. You can't get anything that way.
No.
It just won't happen.
Or the ones that rotate you through so many locations that you don't even have time to set up your equipment before, oh, wait, no, you got to go to the next one because
Yeah.
there's another group coming
Yeah.
right in.
Yeah, you have 45 minutes here. You have an hour here. You have 30 minutes there. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I can't stand that.
It's,
Well, unfortunately, I have got to get out of the way here. I know you need to wrap this show up. It's been a pleasure being part of your first episode, and I'm always around if you want me back.
you know I will.
Bye.
Bye. So thank you, George. We really appreciate your visit and all the great wisdom you shared with us. I can guarantee you, listeners, that he will be back and sharing more with us. On the wrap-up, just a little more detail. Topic Paranormal does air on Sunday nights from 7 to 8 o'clock with replays on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a Facebook group. Check us out there. You can also find us through the Astronet Radio Show website. And more of that contact information will be included at the end of the show here as we leave. The number one thing I would like for y'all to do as listeners, send us information. What do you want to hear about? Give me some topic ideas. Tell me about some of your experiences. That's one of the great things about being the person in charge of the show is I get to choose what we talk about and who we talk to about what we talk about. But I do want some input too at the same time. I'm not as controlling as I sound, I promise. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. The next one's going to be even better. We'll be interviewing one of the members of the Brain Trust, and you'll get a good idea of how we work as a team. So thanks again for joining us tonight, and we'll see you soon.
Experience the topics of conversation on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Topic Paranormal. Have a topic suggestion or a question? Send an email to topicparanormal@gmail.com or post it to the Topic Paranormal Facebook page. Topic Paranormal is part of the Astronet Radio family. Visit astronetradio.com for more awesome podcasts.
This episode, copyright 2019, by astronetradio.com. All rights reserved.